Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Congress Square Redesign Public Forum. My name is Kevin Kraft. I'm the Deputy Planning Director for the City of Portland. We are thrilled to have you with us here this afternoon. It's great to see all of you in person rather through Zoom, so we're very excited to have you here. Before we get started, I just wanted to lay out the format for today's public forum. To kick us off, you're going to hear from Christine Grimando, the Director of Planning and Urban Development for the city. Following Christine will be a presentation from the Congress Square Redesign consultant, WRT, who will be followed by world-renowned artist Sarah Z. The fact that we are in person, which we are very excited about, we just kindly ask that you keep your masks on during the event. And with that, I'd like to welcome Christine Grimando.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I just want to reiterate, I am thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to be doing this in person. We'll also be making a video of this event available for others who couldn't be here today. So again, I'm Christine Grimando. I'm the Director of Planning and Urban Development with the City of Portland. And the redesign of Congress Square, the square and the intersection beyond, has been underway, the process for it and the planning for it, for about a decade. Now that's a long time, but a lot's happened, and a lot is still obviously to come. And I think for me, any mention of this long process has to sort of note the many people who have touched this project. It is truly a multidisciplinary, multifaceted, collaborative project, end to end. And I will not even try to name them all, but it is sort of intrinsic to the planning process here and how we've gotten here today. I do want to recognize a few people, though, who have been critical, particularly bringing us here today. This Department of Planning's previous urban designer, Caitlin Cameron, she was with us for about 8.5 years and was very close to this project for a long time, and really one of the guiding hands throughout this process. And surely her imprint will be felt for a long time to come. But she's left the department some months back, and Kevin Kraft, our Deputy Director, stepped in to help realize this event with the talent and energy and alacrity he brings to everything. And so want to note his role in convening us all here today. The city's Public Art Committee has been steadfast in their commitment and in their vision to public art as central to this process, and in particular this artist and this installation as central to this project and the success of this project. And they have been invaluable in their support and in their vision. Friends at Congress Square, wonderful partners, but also amazing champions and advocates for this space over the years. Both advocates for the space as it is today and as it will be, and we certainly would not be here without their fine work over the years and ongoing. The public and the people of Portland have contributed their vision, their goals, their needs, their wishes for this project, every phase of it throughout, which is as it should be, and the project is better and will be better for it. And they have been sort of a crucial part to us realizing this vision. Now, this event was supposed to happen about a year ago. It was disrupted due to the pandemic, as so many things were disrupted due to the pandemic. But I think that the pandemic has left its mark on this space and this initiative in more ways than our schedule. And I think back to 2020 and how, when we all started to reemerge from our relative and respective lockdowns, that spaces like Congress Square were the places we went and were able to go. And yes, they are important for our public health. That message, I think, is clear for all of us, but they're important for more than just our public health. I think our common spaces, our common realm, our parks, our squares are so important for our civic health and our community life, and that's never been clearer. And I have never been more committed to the value of projects like these, and in this in particular, even more than in the before times. So I look forward to a transformed Congress Square, and thank you for all joining us here today to be part of that process. I am delighted to welcome WRT back to speak, and I am more than thrilled to welcome Sarah Z back to Portland. I hope you enjoy the event. I'm going to turn it back over to Kevin, and look forward to talking to everyone after, too. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Christine. Now I'd like to welcome from WRT, Keiko Kramer and Patrick Kalina.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's really delight to be back to the Portland, and really thank you so much for coming out in such a beautiful fall season. And I was coming in like, no one's gonna come. Outside is so beautiful, but I really appreciate and really excited to be here today with our team and Patrick, and we also have a Steve and Dan from our team here, and so excited to talk about the Congress Square redesign. So I see many familiar faces here, so I don't want to go through back to the same elements we went through the previous workshop, but believe it or not, it was back in 2017 and 18, and it's been a while. And what is Congress Square redesign, which is a middle of historical district, Congress Street historical district in heart of the place and almost a gateway toward to the downtown and waterfront. And this is exactly the area we are working on in the orange kind of shaded area, which is surrounded by beautiful character of the historical elements and the people activity and heart of the center of the people active and programming happening right now. And this one is interesting. So this here, oh, I have to use this one. Here is the May 4th, 2016, can you believe it? It was like more than 5 years ago, and that's like, I still remember excitement and sort of nervousness at the museum stage. We did a public interview presentation, and since then, we have been doing a workshop and sort of with the stakeholders and community and public engagement. And as Christine mentioned, we are trying to be transparency inclusive as possible to this process. It is existing square, it is existing park and street and communities and very active community place. So we cannot process and design without you all, and that was our intent, and hopefully that was the process you all can agree with us. However, after the March 13th, 2017, the last public engagement, it went to sleep because of the challenging moment we all have, and I truly appreciate we can coming back here today and talk about design again. But during the 2020, we didn't just stop, and we are slowly progressing, and some of the piece is in a progress. And here today, 2021, November 6th, we have completed the portion of the bid set. And so it's going to be construction phase this year, next year, and you will start seeing the improvement on the Congress Square itself, which is very exciting because long time talking, design, what's happening? Nothing happening. Yes, it's going to happen. So as much as this is beloved and active and it's a great place already, then I think early stage we heard a lot, what do you guys do? Like we love already, we are using already, there are no improvement needed. Not quite that. And we, through the conversations, through the site visits, through the workshop with you all, we're finding some challenges, but also more opportunities we can expand. And just want to go through quickly to what we discussed, and there's some finding we did in the back then in the early stage. Connectivities, it's very high volume traffic is going through, pedestrian is crossing, and their safety issue is still there. It's popular as much they are now. Safety is an issue, and also this is the gateway as described, coming into the downtown, people welcoming, people driving through. We need to make sure unify as the square and create more sense of arrival. Accessibility. Absolutely. Park is great use and high volume of programming going on, but still steps and some of the accessibility is not clear. And we want to make sure this place to be inclusive, accessible for everyone, and also kind of accommodating to all different programming for as an inclusive place. And identity. I mean, the places already has an identity, that the part of the historical district and the fabric and historical building, and you can see why this is so popular and beloved. But we just want to make sure that was enhanced and also continue to the place to build a community. And those kind of understanding conversation and to based on our design as well, so we go into some of the physical analysis, what's the sort of the shade and what's the condition of the plaza itself, and always challenging to when we dealing with the existing condition. We want to make sure the understanding is in a place and based on our design. Also, of course, everyone come here, so many activities already there. We want to make sure understanding of how people use, and I think one of the priority we really focus is continue to able to use the activities happening, but what can else happen? What can else happen to the same place? But the first we start learning from what is the programming and what is the programming for everyone. And we really fascinated about seeing so many different programming, especially for at the park, is happening small, large, and different event, passive, more active, almost daily basis. And that is evidence through the challenging time as well. I mean, I didn't travel, I don't live here, but I'm seeing through the Instagram, website, you guys awesome. I was really fascinated about the activities going on in the city as well as at the park. And during the conversation, we also finding some of the momentum and goals and kind of shaping to the where we want to really go and hearing what we are hearing. And this is what we heard from you all folks. Is, want to be the year around. Winter, brutal, yes, but their place to people want to go. How we can create the interest to the place. Day to night activity and contemporary, more active or passive. Can we have a both? Also, we have a public art. I know everyone waiting to hear from Sala in after the presentation, but as the destination, we're gonna be create the public art as integration to the park and square. And then Patrick is gonna be speak about sort of dynamic creative planting, which is gonna be provide you all season and always changing, always evolving, and you can coming back after and after and after to see a different sort of elements and different impression from the planting design, and which gonna be the primary focus of this park as well. And a more fluid, accessible, and flexible place. So these are goals we set, and this is the shared and shaped by everyone to guide all of us, including design team. A welcoming, inclusive Congress Square that celebrate the local arts and culture and fosters the spontaneity while remaining accessible and inviting to all. So just not talking, we work with you all, shaping a place, sleep up and drawing the stuff, and you will see that all this sketch is going to be reflected in a current design, which is very important for us to work with you all, not just understanding what's going on, but actual form and shape and design. You all are part of this process. So let's move on to how transformation is happening and how current design evolve. So again, this is the current condition. We have street coming in, Free Street and High Street and Congress going through, and we are here today. So this is it current, and this is the current design we are going to kind of develop with you all. And partially some of the more 50% documentation, partially is moving on to the construction phase. And I want to walk you through a little bit more detail and elements and what is going on the old Congress Square and Congress Square Park. So this is the heart of activities, all different kind of things happening. So first things we cannot do or disrupt those programs. So how we can keep activity and flexibility, which is accommodating to many scale and different scale activities in a central piece, but providing more permanent seating. I think that's the one of the things asked to provide more permanent seating. But the permanent seating is not just the seating, also holding the planting, holding the steps, and different multiple functional. That way we can provide maximizing a flex space to use the other activity. And you can see the all green space, which is going to be the planting designed by Patrick, and with the trees and perennials and herbaceous. All season, you're gonna see different kind of expression from the planting. Another aspect is to the Congress Park is we have a water feature in here. And that was also the seamlessly embedded into the floor. So in the summertime, kids and everyone can enjoy the water feature, but the winter time, shut it off. Also, if you have any event, you can have a big event and shut off then a big event. Now, one of the biggest feature on the park is obviously the public art designed by Sala. And that's gonna be sitting onto that corner, and you will see every street coming in. That was the first feature as a part of the gateway to you will witness and to see here. And across the street from the Congress Street, we are also unifying to the PMA Plaza, which has more seating and which have more permanent planting area, but still they have some gathering and event is happening. So we are trying to keep both clearing to the circulation for the pedestrian walkers, but at the same time, there's some momentum. You can be a little bit sit down and kind of quiet moment, has lunch and having conversation, along with the also keeping the circulation and clearance in front of the museum. I think another thing is really creating to the tabletop crossing around between this section, and that way it's more feels unified. It's more also along the Free Street feels a little bit more connected, and to make sure as a part of the unified Congress Square. A little bit about the materials. We have progressed some of the detailed materials along with some of them already in the construction documentation and going to move to the construction. And many of the paving is actually we are using a stone granite paving. The granite paving has a different size, different sort of pattern. And also we are making sure the transition from the brick paving, which is the many of the public, the sidewalk is designed and used, and how we can transition smoothly from brick to the stone. But those transition can provide also people recognize you are in the Congress Square. As I mentioned, we also have many permanent seating. Some of them act as like a part of the steps and circulation, but some of them are holding to planting. And you have some of stepping kind of seat wall, so you can sit down a little bit higher and looking at some event. Some stage can be set up to sort of the part of the same location. You have a stage right now, and then you can set up right here as well. It's a little bit higher. And in all place, people can see the activities going on there. But if no event going on, there are so many choice to a user to choose and sit and have a lunch and have a conversation. I believe continue to have a table and chair is going to be placed if there are no event going on. So there you have more choice to sit down in the park and enjoy as well. And then similar sort of materials for the seat wall and permanent seating area is coming into the PMA Plaza side as well. So you have a choice to a little bit more smaller, quiet side or more active park side to choose to sit and enjoy an outdoor environment. So we're going to zoom in a little bit more view to zoom in, going through some of the elements. You can see public art here. And this is a PM. And you can see more greener and more trees and excitement to dynamic creative planting you will see. And when you're coming in this intersection, you are looking from the east side of the Congress Street coming into the intersection, you see many trees and many greens. And that's another aspect. When you're walking the sidewalk, you will see obviously paving and different fields. But even you driving through, you can recognize the Congress Square as a gateway through the greens, through the different sort of pattern and color and public art. and a couple of things, public art right there, and a water feature is gonna be right there. It is a little bit higher grading, elevated, so you can have some stage aspect on there. And all the way back, we're also providing a little bit quiet space, but it's become natural play. So kids can be a little bit running around, especially smaller kids. It's far away from the street. It's more safer and more quieter, but it has some natural aspect as like a little bit more playground. And across the street, PMA Plaza, as I mentioned, there's some seating and a more planting area, creating the smaller nook, so people can be a little bit more different choice to spending a time in front of this plaza, as well as maintain existing public art and entrance and accessibility toward to the park as well, and a museum as well, and sort of emphasizing to the clear path to inviting and welcoming them to the museum. And as I mentioned, there are many seating opportunities in the park and a square itself, and some of them are seat wall, some of them are movable chair, and there are more space you can choose to spend time. So I mentioned about some of them moving for the construction, some of them are still in the process for the documentation, and this is the project area. And phase A, the streetscape and roadway, which we're showing in the black line here, is gonna be moving forward to as a construction. So you will start seeing improvement at the streetscape and the intersection. The phase B is the Congress Park and the portion of the PMA Plaza. This will be gonna be followed to, and the construction documentation process is gonna be start right now. So you will see more, some of the progress in the future pretty soon. And this is a part of the construction documentation we set for the phase A, which is a pretty sort of same with what we proceed and engage you all at the previous engagement. And having the planting and many trees is coming into the intersection. And as I mentioned, the dynamic planting palette, this is one of the features we continue to from the beginning and truthful to through the design process we really push and engage and people excited about. And I want to welcome the Patrick to talk about the planting design.
Thank you. Good to be back with you. So let's talk about what does dynamic mean, right? So here in Portland, you had a city that was forested and then largely deforested, right, over time. And as cities develop, they become generally more and more impermeable, right? So what we're trying to do is get back to some of these conditions where, because in this region's DNA, it knows that it was once a forest. And so all of those successional moments you see poking up through cracks and little voids is the region trying to reassert itself. So that's the goal. The goal is to become more permeable. The design brief was sort of to think about this in terms of rupture, of think kind of like lifting up stone. And so that's the relationship between plants or between the living landscape and a hardscape. So Keiko mentioned the construction drawings, but I just want to take you through the sequence of the canopy. So there's sort of the reforestation, essentially, of this part of town. The first phase is going to focus on generally the streetscape, and what we introduced here, all of these trees, by the way, are all regionally native species. This is swamp white oak, and so the idea is to have a grander canopy tree with a longer lifespan, and around now, that would be the fall color, right? So here's their fall color tones here. As you move to the back corner or to the PMA, there you have more of a riparian species and sort of multi-trunk gray birch. You can see the trunks there. That's the trees that we put on the High Line, and you get again the sense of a dynamic character of those trees emerging from a ground plane, a living ground plane. Another sequence of trees here in the park itself is Nyssa sylvatica or black gum, or some people say Tupelo, which would be fire engine red in the fall. And then another small tree to large shrub, Allegheny serviceberry or Amelanchier laevis here, white flowers, blue fruits in June, and then that amazing fall color in the fall. So you can start to see the aggregation of the fall moment developing here, and then lastly with bur oak, another grand long-lived, sort of majestic, spreading, generous tree, really as a nod to the fact that you have trees that have kind of hung on there for a while that are going to be replaced, and you want to give something that's going to have a longer legacy, is the hope. So this is sort of the fall moment collectively. But so the added benefit is that you have this pretty extensive ground plane, right? And much more generous generally than most urban treescapes are along the street. And so here it is, here kind of identifying that intersection, kind of that you can make this legible for the city. They'll know that they're in this place by this one green expression through this intersection. And then in the fall, having this hyper seasonality. So with things that are that narrow, they are very long, but things that are that narrow, it can be challenging to get complexity. And complexity is where, complexity and repetition is where the hyper seasonality comes from. And so we extend them over those bands so that we think of them, even though they're broken up by pavement, that they are extensions of each other. So that repetition will come into place, and this is how we kind of go through this process, where in these scale exercises, we start to look at what are these repeated moments, and how do we take the idea of seasons from, our kids' perspective of it, spring, summer, fall, winter, and start to think of it in terms of this unfolding character of week by week by week, flowers replaced by seed heads, replaced by stems, replaced by the color of senescing foliage in addition to the color of flowers, and really kind of extending the idea of what is aesthetic, or what is aesthetically interesting. So here's just sort of a range of the herbaceous layer. This ground plane, again, we're looking at durable perennial plants that can handle, challenging conditions over time. Spring, summer, fall, winter, always going to be something interesting there. And then in the spring, everything gets cut back and it starts this process all over again. And just to show you that I wanted to get a precedent, like how does this work? I mean, part of the work that I do in the urban realm particularly is not just to design things, but to make them functional, because you want these communities to have a successful outcome, right? So you want to have things that you can rely on. And so here's an example that I think aligns pretty closely. We worked on the Rose Kennedy Greenway in Boston, which in the wharf blocks where they had some landscapes fail and needed to be redone, and they had a very small budget to make this go again. And so here, right on Atlantic Street, in very limited soil volumes above the highway tunnel, you have a real functioning dynamic landscape that's showing interest, not just showing interest throughout the seasons, but then also serving as a successful physical barrier to Atlantic Street. And if you've been in Boston, you know how busy a street that is with the tour buses, et cetera. And yet all the people in the park are able to get some relief from that perspective. So these other projects are our laboratory for working through these ideas and trying to get a sense of the palette that is going to make it more successful. And that outer first phase is just the first go around, right? So it's the overture. And then what comes later is sort of the grander piece.
So this board is out there, so you can see more detail. I just want to be touched on a timeline, but as I mentioned, some of them going to construction pretty soon, so you will see, and some of them going to the cook moving forward, and we absolutely back in action. So you will see me again probably sometime soon as well, but you see actual action on the street as well, which is important. And it's just going to be end up the pretty picture to what you're going to expect to see on the street in the future when it's completed. So this is, again, from you are approaching from east. Oh, I was wrong. Approaching from west. Congress Street is approaching from east side. Sorry, yes. Congress Street is from the east side. Here you go, west side. You're looking at the Congress Square. And this is looking toward to the park from a little bit higher, and you see Sala's sculpture right there, and you can see a little bit water is bubbling up in the back. And this is from across the street, PMA Plaza. You are looking back to the sculpture as well as a park, and you're staring at the hotel we are here. And this is you are standing all the way back of the park and looking back to the actual PMA Plaza and museum as well as across the street. And you can see some of the summer activities in here, and some of the water is going on, and the sculpture is right heart of the park and the center of the intersection and gateway. Fall season, as Patrick described, it's gonna be gorgeous. It's gonna be vibrant and green, and you can do many different activities, and hopefully I can come in back on time. In the winter time, of course, you still have enjoying the winter time. It's a different season, and that's the beauty of it, bird or snow, but you still can enjoy the park. Thank you so much. And I really, really appreciate you all come out, and I cannot tell you how privileged and honored to work with you all in 5 years and continue to work with you, and let's complete this park and square and streetscape. It will be gorgeous and it will be exciting. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Keiko and Paul. That was great. Our next presenter's work is exhibited worldwide, including permanent collections at institutions such as the Museum of Modern Art in New York, San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, the Guggenheim, and the Tate Modern. She has created many public works, including pieces for the Seattle Opera House, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in New York City, and the LaGuardia Airport, as well as a new permanent commission for the Storm King Art Center in New York. Please welcome 2003 MacArthur Fellow, Sarah Z.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. It's really special to gather in person, and I think the urgency of this project has only grown with, the pandemic that we've all been going through and still are in, and public space and being part of a community, really community-driven public space project, I think is very special. So this is something we've been working on together for a long time, and it feels like the right time for it to come to life. So this is a piece that, we came up with a lot of ideas about what was really important in this location. And one of the ideas was really to have it be like a magnet for a very complex space where you have people coming from every direction, and that it was really important to actually have something right at that corner that identified the space, that really became something where when you were getting to that location, because you can get to it from so many circuitous routes, you knew where you were, and it really became a place that located you in the neighborhood within Portland. And so this is a piece that reflects the park around it and reflects time around it, and the landscape that both Patrick and Keiko talked about. Really, all of those colors will change through the day, but it also reflects the sky in a permanent state. So in the interior of the piece, the idea is that it has an image of the sky, and on the outside, it's constantly reflecting the movement around the park, the seasons of the park, the daily life. So you have these two sort of juxtaposition of a frozen moment in time with time passing around you. And just wanted to show you some of the seminal ideas and where the ideas started from. This is a really early sketch. And I think the idea of gathering was a really important idea. Something I think about a lot in sculpture is how many parts come together to make a whole, and to make a sculpture where you actually actively see that happening, that your eye is kind of finishing the piece in space. So this idea of gathering was important. This idea of reflection in sculpture, that a sculpture or work of art can be a very transformative experience in terms of self-reflection or reflection in a space, and that the piece would be reflective itself of the space, of the sky above, and again, of the movement around it. And kind of magnetism of how you use a sculpture or an artwork to become a kind of magnet to a place, to ground that place, to give that place an identity, and how an artwork can really do that in a way, and in a way that nothing else can, I think, when it's done right. And that this piece, as you moved around it, you would actually have this incredible experience of, hopefully, sculpture in the round, where the piece entirely changes as you move around it. So a kind of dynamism in the space through the seasons, but also as you moved around it in space. Seeing it kind of come together, come apart, before your eyes, and for your own eye to actually create, and complete the sphere, so that it was always in a kind of state of becoming or eroding. That's something that's always been interesting to me. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the materials and relate them also to pieces that I've done in the past. So the inside of the is going to be an image of the sky over Maine. And it's going to be a blue sky. So through the seasons, that will remain the same. You will always see the blue sky. And this is a close-up of a panel from the piece that I did at LaGuardia we actually put it up over the pandemic. And this is the piece at LaGuardia. And there's a relationship to this piece, obviously. So this piece has an opening in the center, and you're actually looking into the opening. And similarly, there's a front and kind of a front and a back to the image. And so these images you're looking into it. And when you look in, you see images of the sky at different times of the day. And this is it from below. And this you can really understand that when you're behind the work, you see the back of a piece. So in the piece in Congress Square, that will be mirrored. So everything that's white in LaGuardia is actually a polished stainless steel. So you can imagine how dynamic it will be to move behind it. And then when you move in front of it, the images are revealed. And so this was a piece actually, that was sort of, it came to life, but it was actually, they were conceived and they're almost related pieces in many ways. The other idea was also this idea I said about your eye creates the whole. In the LaGuardia piece, actually, there's nothing round in that piece, but we perceive it as a sphere. So I wanted to talk a little about the scaffolding structure. I'm interested in sculpture where what's holding the piece up and what you're seeing as sort of the front are kind of equally as important. So you don't sort of have like a puppet on a string, or you're not supposed to see like the wire behind. So the scaffolding structure is also supposed to be quite beautiful, and we spend a lot of time on that. And this shows a piece that I did at the High Line in New York, which wasn't a permanent piece there. It's actually in Oslo now, in a park. But you can see it's a very a lot of attention is paid to that idea of the scaffolding. In this piece, it's holding up birdhouses, actually. But the scaffolding is as important as the house itself. And it'll be a similar sort of stainless steel that will have this kind of glittering reflection of the sun as you go around it. And to talk a little bit about the back of the piece and the stainless steel, you can see sort of how we've been playing with stainless steel. This is a piece, and like Portland, I think all three of these pieces that I'm showing you, they're actually processes that when we've made them, they're actually kind of new processes. So this is a piece where the stainless steel is very, very polished on the top. So it reflects the sky. So you can see this is actually the sky being reflected in the piece. But the sides of the steel is very rough. So you really get this kind of plane, but also has this feeling of, again, pieces to the whole, making the whole, that it's kind of a sculpture that cradles a void. And that your eye is actually making the sphere, so that it's really kind of you're creating structure as you look at the piece itself. But it's an important example of how you can imagine the back of this piece will actually reflect the nature around it. And like the piece here, it's entirely different on a different day. So on a cloudy day, you see this, and on a the image before, you get a very white, almost steely look. And this kind of reflection, you'll see, this is from the top of that piece, you'll see in the park itself. And, this idea that Patrick was showing about, the piece will actually be orange when in the fall, a piece, will be reflecting white when it snows, will happen in the context of this work as well. So you can see that the whole back side will in some ways be as important as the front. And you can see it sort of really sits on that corner. I was actually just driving in with Mike from the studio, and you really can see that corner. You'll catch that corner from all directions. And it's going to sort of sit out from the park and enter you into the park. You can see that's sort of the scale of it. And these pieces also, when you get close to them, you actually almost feel like, because of the scale of them, they almost feel like they come around you and you're within them. So this is from within the park. And this idea that you would dynamically come to it from all directions, but when you came up to it, you would really be actually inside the piece, I think is something that you really only get from these pieces from standing right above them. So that is my last image, and hopefully we'll harness the sky and bring it into Congress Square. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We now wanted to open this up to all of you, and we have roughly 30 to 40 minutes here for questions for Sarah, Keiko, or Patrick. So if anybody would like to just raise their hand and ask questions, we're happy to take them.
Hi, I'm a little bit of a safety bug because I walk quite a bit downtown with my dog, and so I didn't realize exactly where the artwork was until the very end, as you showed the piece. So I'm not sure. Could you bring up a picture of the intersection with this, just back a ways though, back into the other presentation? All right, so that's fine. And so so the safety part of it, and you're not going to like this, by the way, okay? Because because right now, are they called bollards that are there, the concrete things that are on the ground? What are they called? Bollards. Bollards. I'm not a transportation person. But there's a certain amount of safety that comes with them, you know? And I realize you're hopping from island to island right now, and one of the islands is going away. So, but where those, and so the reason why I'm not trying to take away from your artwork, okay? But I was thinking where those streetlights are on the step outs, okay? If you look at the two streetlights, they could be an ideal place to put bollards to protect the public. And so you've got, you've got turning traffic coming around, and I mean, you could put one of those where those streetlights are in each place, and have a concrete abutment that's going to force traffic away. Well, first off, one could be positioned to maybe protect your artwork, okay, in case there's a stupid driver being distracted. But I could see the streetlight coming up in the middle of it, and then if you want to beautify it a little bit, add a little bit of greenery to the top. You know, you could still, but from a safety standpoint, you've got traffic coming down Congress Street and then coming up and going around to the right, and one on each corner where those lights are, and having the light coming up through would provide some safety and a little bit of a, what is it, like a light boat, or not a light boat, but, like a place to just, and the last thing I'll say about it is that nobody has any business stepping off on those sections, meaning you're jaywalking. If you're going to step off where that light is to cross, that's not part of the design. You want to encourage people to go, into the walkway. And so if there's an abutment there, it's going to force people more towards the walkway. So I probably went too far, but part of it is a safety thing. And, I really didn't realize how it might be positioned in front of your artwork. I mean, the driver's going by. I actually might be off to the left a little bit, but I probably went on too far, but.
Let's see if they have an answer.
Yes.
No, I think those are fair points to be made. I think these are more directed towards engineering of the actual intersection themselves, which is part of phase one being managed by DOT and the Department of Public Works. But I think one of the major factors of this entire redesign is to make this a safer space, as it's not really functioning well today. So I think safety was a major factor in this whole redesign. I don't know, Keiko, Steve, you want to take that? I know Steve from Sebago has been working on this.
Thank you. what I would say is that if you look around the edges of the intersection, you'll notice that there are planters which kind of separate the vehicles from the sidewalk area, and they narrow up, or they kind of funnel you to, if you want to cross the street, to where the bump outs are and where the actual crosswalks are. So I think we've built in some controls so that you're funneling people where you want them to cross. And because it's going to remain a signalized intersection, even though it'll be a little bit different, because the Free Street cut through in front of the PMA is gone. So the traffic is going to be controlled a little bit better. It will be a signalized intersection as it is today, with pedestrian actuation for safety purposes. So I think we've taken into account to a large degree a lot of the concerns that were raised early on, because pedestrian safety was a major consideration on how we did this. And the radiuses, the other thing I would say is the radiuses of the curb lines at the turning points are sized to accommodate the largest vehicle that we have in the city. So they're not so tight that people are going to be running up on the sidewalk to get around the corner if they're on the inside. So I think to a large degree, a lot of what you were raising were all valid points, and there were things that we took into account when we came up with the final layout of the intersection. And as Keiko said, that is the first part of the project. We expect that next summer through 2022, this will be reconfigured in this manner, with the streetscape plantings around the sidewalk themselves, leaving just the park and the plaza itself to be the subsequent Phase B, as it was termed, being constructed in probably '23, I would say. Okay, is that accurate?
Just to mention that it's a beautiful design.
Mhm.
You know, I have no qualms with anything. And my son is going to Emerson College now, right near the Common.
Yep.
So it's my first introduction to really city driving, and there's a lot of crazy stuff that, I mean, you know, you can become a worrywart with this stuff. And but I just looked at that one part of it, so thank you.
Sure, you bet.
Hi, yeah, I have three quick questions. One is, the artwork looks like a jungle gym. Why won't it function like that? The second one is, bur oaks have tap roots that are as long as 5 feet in the first year. Are special prep being made for underground? Because often there's gravel compacted under trees, and that doesn't seem to be appropriate for oaks. And third of all, the gray birch. There are only 2 gray birch scheduled to be in front of the museum. Right now, they have 5 or 6 white birch. Why so few trees in front of the museum? That's it, thanks.
I mean, I think any most interesting public artworks are an experiment. And this is the first thing that is going to help with this, is that it's actually on a raised bed. But, you know, with Storm King, we have a gate around it. You know, you see how it works with the space once they built it. There are ways that we may have to actually guard the piece. So it's something that, you know, you have to see how people relate to work in public spaces. But entirely, you know, these images don't show that, but it's something we're well aware of. And in all of the pieces we've done, in all the pieces I showed you, there were adjustments with real life situations to protect the work and to protect people.
Trees. So the bur oak is totally adaptable to the condition that we have. We don't have the limitations also in the park that we do on the street. As a matter of fact, if you get to visit the Highline, there are 5 bur oaks above 18th Street in 18 inches of soil, and they've been there since 2009. I actually thought it was kind of bananas that we were doing that, but it's been interesting to kind of see what their adaptability is. And regarding the gray birch, everything that's there is sized to the soil volume. So we're kind of achieving this sort of collective canopy when using gray birch, which is a riparian species and able to kind of regenerate and push up lots of stems, is that the multi-stem combination of those things will give the appearance of more trunks, essentially. So it's the aggregate rather than the individual dot in a planter. And everything we want to function. So everything is sort of scaled with regard to the relationship between the tree and the ground plane.
Hello. Thank you. This is beautiful. This is amazing. My name is Emma Holder. I'm the Parkside Neighborhood Association president, and Congress Square actually is in Parkside, which is awesome. I have something that this will ripple out into all of Portland because it's such a node is, and something that's really important to me as a neighborhood resident is speed control. So what you've got here, is the necking down of some of many travel lanes. Probably one of the fastest of which in the city is High Street, and the other one would be State, right? Its sister on the other side, both of which are Department of, they're the 77, and they go through the most densely populated square mile in Maine, which is Parkside. And so we have 3 parks, and this is sort of like the Mama Bear Park. We have the Baby Bear Park, which is Bramhall, and then we have Mama Bear, and we have Papa Bear. I'd like to know if there's some downstream thought of how the necking down of this intersection is going to then ripple out into other places downstream. So people slow down. There's a necking down right here at High Street. They go through. I'm talking about drivers, and then they zoom. They will go through onto the other side of Congress Square Park, and then they will go phew, and then Cumberland, and then shoo, down the hill, past the YMCA, where there are a lot of little ones that try to get across, and then try to make the lights at the bottom of the hill. So I see opportunity here to use this, the beautiful space, the attention-getting parts of it all, the narrowing of the streets. I'd love to know what downstream effects are going to be planned for this area to help that calmness that I think is going to be attracted by this area. How can we keep this going, just for safety through the park? And this is probably more of an engineer question as well. But I just wanted to bring that up as for future thoughts. Thank you.
Steve?
One of the things that you may or may not know is that both State and High have what are called coordinated traffic signals that operate sequentially as you go in both directions. One of the thoughts certainly, and what we're doing with the new signal here at this location is it is being interconnected with the 2 adjoining ones, one at Cumberland and the other one at Spring. So it's part of that corridor that if you come off the bridge and you're heading up High Street, going up the hill and then down, obviously, to Deering Oaks Park at the bottom. There's the ability to time the traffic signals to a certain speed. So I think what you're getting at is the way to control the speed of traffic will be that not only the design with the dimensions of the lanes, but will also be the timing of the signals, which is this is being set up so it's going to be able to be controlled in a manner in a variety of different ways. So there could be some experimentation done to keep the speeds down. So that ability does exist.
That's helpful. And the caveat also is how do you also connect to the Fore River Parkway and maybe change some of that traffic that's coming off the bridge, divert it, as opposed to going straight through town to going around to Ringwood.
Absolutely, and I was involved in some early designs of that Fore River Parkway when it was conceived, and that, quite frankly, was part of the mission, was to get people out of using State and High and to funnel them around to 295. So, yeah, I think that's something. The problem that exists, though, and we looked at that diversion of traffic during the construction, because as you can imagine, when we're working on all 4 quadrants of this intersection, it's going to be a challenge. Traffic is not going to, it'll remain open. We're not closing anything. We did talk about an option of closing traffic completely and diverting traffic around so we could get it done faster, but that was not where we ended up. So we will be maintaining one lane of traffic in each direction at all times during construction here. But one of the things that we talked about was diverting people coming off the bridge, because over half of the people that come across the bridge want to come up over the hill and go down. It's kind of interesting that that's their destination. But the problem we have is down at the IMT, the intersection at the, after you go down to Commercial Street and head to the west, that first intersection, it's at the entrance to the International Marine Terminal. That signal is a problem in terms of it backs up today. And when we start adding more and more traffic diverting, trying to divert around, there just isn't enough pavement there, unfortunately, to get everybody that wants to go through there. So that's the challenge. That's the limiting factor in terms of how many people will actually seek that as an alternative route. It's just because of that being a constraint.
Sorry, these guys had their hands raised.
Hi, everybody. I work over at the museum and just want to say that this neighborhood's been neglected for so long, and we are so thankful that Sarah Z and your team and WRT has stayed with us. Thank you for your patience through this public process, which is long and enduring, and thank all of us here who have waited for this for so long. I cannot thank you enough. This just looks absolutely gorgeous. We are headed towards changing this part of Portland, and hopefully I think what you're doing here can actually then spread out throughout the city in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. It's slowing down traffic, it's thinking about families and pedestrians. Sarah's work of art, we are so privileged to have that work of art in our neighborhood. We are so thankful for you all again for sticking with us. My only question actually is for Sarah is, how tall is that piece gonna be in the front?
He's gone, but the gentleman who did, I think, one of the things that we're going to do with that piece is actually raise it up so that it isn't accessible to, to people climbing on it. So it will actually be a little bit higher up, and I'm hoping to work with Patrick on a kind of landscaping of it so that it will be a bit raised from the pictures for safety reasons. But the piece itself is about 17 feet. But I think that we will actually raise it so that you don't walk, you don't feel like you can walk or climb it. So probably, my guess is we'll raise it so you'll be coming at it more sort of, shoulder level. And then it's 17 feet up.
We also do, is there gonna be lighting around it? So in the evening, are we gonna get some action too?
Yeah, we'll put lighting in the base that will light up into the work. Yeah.
And just to follow up to the piece, I can't remember when you first came and showed us the drawings for this piece, and since then you've done Storm King and LaGuardia.
Yeah.
In terms of the concept, the three are similar.
Yeah.
At what point did you come up with this idea? I know you showed the early drawing of the gathering. Was that actually for this project and then it led to the other two? Or were you thinking about Storm King and LaGuardia first? Or how was that all?
That's a good question. I think Storm King was the first. And I think LaGuardia and this work they came sort of to life in a similar way. I mean, this idea of a capture of time from an image, and that the main part of the work is actually a void, and so it's really, the sculpture is really nesting a void. Was similar. I was thinking about those at the same time. Yeah, and then, the New York governor at the time put a lot of fire under it, so it got done first. But, the airports have that urgency. But, this one is really different because you're going to see the sky and then you're going to see the sky, right? Because this is really outdoors. So it has, I think, will have a really different dynamism because it's actually outside, which is why it's interesting to see Storm King, because Storm King, you really see how dynamic. When you're outside, you have the sky as the ceiling. So I'm excited
Great, thank you
about
so
it.
much. And the views from the museum are going to look great too, looking down and across.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're going to be pretty
No,
phenomenal.
absolutely.
So thank you all very much.
Thanks. I too work with Mark at the museum, and I just had two quick questions. One was related to the two species of oaks and whether or not either had a natural resistance to brown-tail moth that has been emerging as sort of a real concern in the area. And then secondly, recognizing I know every project has to start and stop somewhere, but with 142 Free Street poised for redevelopment and the idea of granite pavers, was there any thought of extending sort of the definition of Congress Square Park to include that area?
The moth question is a quick one. I mean, the goal is, I mean, these are both very durable, resilient species. The moth issue is one that we've got to keep watching because it has become a substantial challenge, and not everywhere, but in the pockets where it's been found. So it's something that we'll track and keep an eye on.
I think that in front of sort of the museum extension, I think plan is easy to see. I think at this stage when we are doing for the phase 1, which is going to be, we can probably see this one too, part of the phase 1, and right now, not this one, maybe.
It looked like it was pegged for brick versus, even though it's being redeveloped, it was pegged for brick versus the granite paving.
Yep. Right. Yeah, so right now the phase 1 is using this one. It's like easier to do. So originally, yes, Steve kind of mentioning we are considering up to this point, and then we are aware of some kind of development going on here, which wasn't sort of aligned to the schedule what is going to be happen. So in the future, I think similar things is happen to in terms of transition if that in front of this area, which is not part of this phase A and phase B, but there potentially it can be extended out to part of the development going on. And I think that's something in the future we can easily adapt. And that's the way transition is very designed to be clearly to transition coming brick to the stone. But some of the location we have is like here is much more kind of extending out, some of them extending out. So aligned to with that area, we want to extend the stone at some point. That would be can be happen, but not in this phase and the project limit. Yes.
Thank you. Just Sarah Z, your work is incredible. I've studied it a lot. Just wanted to say that. But I did have a question about the seating that's planned, and if there are any plans for any kind of defensive architecture involved with that. Because Congress Square Park is one of the few places where unhoused people in Portland are able to sleep at night. And just a lot of cities implement these defensive architectures to keep people from sleeping on certain seating. And it's a really disgusting kind of against the community just entirely type of thing. So I'm just concerned about that.
So thank you for question. And I think that is the part we need to be taking into consideration for the final phase to how we can create. It is very hot topics and tricky topics. So everyone start talking about public space, right? Because every urban city has the same issue and same challenging to are you welcoming or are you defending? I think that during a conversation previously that came up, and you can see some of the things we can do or we can planning to do is to having some prevention to people sleep onto it, but it's not really aggressively seeing like something defensive, like not too defensive design. At the same time, you will be accommodating some of the seating, but some not really able to sleep. I think those are the things is including to how maintenance and operation are going to be more extensive, or how you know operate as well? Because more people is in there, people are not going to really sleep. More active, more safety, more lighting. I think that's a natural defense mechanism to some of the folks actually coming into the sleep. So I think that is going to be balance between design and also operation as well. And that's something really important topics we need to continue to discuss on the public open space. So thank you for bringing up.
Thanks. Tracy Reed, architect in Portland. Thank you guys so much. These sort of projects are marathons, not sprints. So this is I know a lot of people in this room have been working on this for a decade. So, and the design team, amazing work. To kind of I would echo all of the comments that have been made already, but also we were just talking about, safe places to sleep in our city, which is a huge topic we're facing. Also public bathrooms, which impact not only unhoused populations, but families with young children, older residents. It impacts all of us. We all use bathrooms. So are there any plans for that? Thanks.
Thank you for that question, Tracy. I don't believe there's currently, certainly not in this design, one plan here, but we are talking actively about this particular topic and this need. That doesn't mean there could not be sort of proximate to this one in the future, and we're talking with Portland Downtown as well. Active topic, we know it's a real need. It's not currently in this program, but it is noted, and we are engaged in discussions about how to do this better across the city. So stay tuned on that. Yep.
Hi, I'm CJ. I'm with the Friends of Congress Square Park. I have another engineering question, so I apologize, which is really simply what the plans are for the signalization for the crosswalks, if they're automated or manual, or if there's a lead interval at all. Just curious.
They're going to be manual, and they will be lead pedestrian intervals implemented. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Dinah Minot with Creative Portland. Congratulations, Sarah. This is just amazing. All of you. The first meeting I went to was the third day of my work here, moving to Portland. So I remember when you did the first presentation. My question today is that when I saw this storm sample with the reflective shiny steel, it reflected the sky, and it sounds like the exterior is reflecting, but not the interior. So we'll see blue on a snowy day inside. Is that the idea? Okay, just wanted.
That's a yes, okay.
Where's the, what are you going to do with the old clock that's there right now? Do we know where that's going to go?
That's a great question. We haven't identified a location yet, but I think that's something that's at the front of our mind right now.
What's the total cost for the project, and are the funds to accomplish the project already appropriated?
So it's a multi-phased project. So I don't think I have the total for all the phases on hand right now, but I can get it to you. I will say for the phase we are discussing right now, well, one, there's a phase that was mentioned for the intersection itself that is paid for already, and that is slated to begin again this coming into 22. So yes, for phase one, or phase A, as I heard it referred to today. Phase B is what we discussed today in detail, and that is in the city's capital improvement plan for a future year. And Friends of Congress Square have also engaged in fundraising as part of that whole package. So there are plans underway for the phase we're discussing today, which will follow the intersection design. And I don't have the full number. I think this phase that we discussed today is a couple of $1 million, and I can get you final details following this, if that's still of interest. Thanks.
I'll just add to Christine's, the Public Art Committee also committed funds through capital improvement funding for the artwork as well.
Hi, I have a follow-up question to that, thinking about Sarah's sculpture and the long-term care that the city is going to be responsible for once it is in place, and if planning around budget and conservation has been thought of.
Yes, of course. That's something we always do with our Public Art Committee, and we have a maintenance person who handles all over 60 public art pieces throughout the city, and that'll be incorporated as part of that.
Hi, this is a very exciting project and it looks beautiful and I'm very excited to see it come to fruition. Sarah, I had a quick question. When you were making a presentation, I was really envisioning myself kind of standing next to this piece and kind of being enveloped by it. And then when you made the comment about it needing to be raised, I was sort of like, oh, because then it's sort of towering over me. I understand the point that not everyone will respect it as it should be, but I just wanted to kind of make that point. Like, I love the idea of standing next to it and sort of being enveloped by it. And then the other question I had was, or I guess the first wasn't really a question, but secondly, is there any concern about the reflectivity as like a sun setting? I know that's been issues in other places, so just about that.
So this kind of sphere space, I've done a few. Some are not permanent. Many are not permanent, and there's a different quality. Some of them have been you'd actually have it at your toes, and I think it will be very beautiful to be high. I do think that ultimately we will want to have signals not to have like young children walk into it. So that's part of the public aspect of this one. But I think part of this idea that you see the sky and you see the piece, you will still feel this kind of envelopment. And we have done ones that are that height, and it just has this kind of incredible kind of celestial quality to it. So I think a piece can't do everything. So, and I think that in this case, it helps also. Compete from far away, that it will really have more of a presence in the car, which was also one of the ideas, was that you would see it even from that. So it's a balance. And your second question was? So we will do, so for Storm King, we did, and architects do all the time, you do glare studies on it, and you can bring the shine. It's actually, stainless steel is amazing. You can bring the shine way down, and it still almost acts like a mirror. So we'll do a glare study for it.
Carrie Tyson, Portland Downtown. So just to follow up on the funding question, so is the best way for those of us who are here, committed, interested citizens, to help contribute to the Friends of Congress Square? Is that the best way for this fundraising effort? And was that friendsofcongressSquare.org?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Go CongressSquarePark.org. Okay, good.
I have a question for Sarah. I'm just curious to hear what drew you to Portland for this piece. Oh. I'm just curious what drew you to Portland for this piece.
There was a call for artists, and one of the things that I really liked about this project was it was from the city, it was from the community. There was it felt like a place that, as Keiko talked about, it's already a kind of loved place, and it has a lot. It has so much potential, but it also, could be cared for at a higher level, I think, and become even more special as a place. So people, when I have work at museums, they ask me, how do I care for the work? And I say, an aged piece is actually interesting, but a neglected one is not. So this is very fine line where this is actually cared for, but I think the reinvigoration of this space is actually this kind of will really make it can make it a magnet in the city, and it has that potential. It's right on the edge of that potential. So when I saw it as a space, I thought this is really interesting because an artwork in this location can make a place that is right on the cusp, with the museum there, you have the park, you have all these intersections. With just a little shift, it could really make a difference in the city with the piece. So to me, that was exciting, and that it was, I think, really community grassroots driven as a project. And I also really love Portland and Maine. I mean, Mike and I are from the Boston area, and we were talking about how we would always end up somewhere in Maine when we were kids. It's like on someone's couch. And we didn't even know where, or like these families, but it was always this, magical place to be. And I was talking to some people outside that for me, New England, the scale of nature sort of grows as you go up the coast, and it's when you reach Maine that nature, it really is that it's kind of has a kind of majesty that you don't have in the rest of New England. And so I've always had a real love of Maine.
Hi, so I actually have a question mostly for DOT, which is that the corridor between High Street and Forest Avenue is one of the most sort of like congested and sort of poorly accommodated ones in the city, where traffic backs up like pretty far down Congress Street East. And it's really already existingly hard to turn off of Forest Avenue as people get off the highway. So there's this constant like backlog of cars, and then the cars turning off of Forest Avenue can't get onto Congress Street because the people block the box constantly. So I'm wondering what accommodations will be made considering the fact that you're shortening the traffic stack by about 80 feet.
That's a great point, but I just wanted to flag that Steve is actually not from DOT. He's from Sebago specifically for this project, but I think that is a fair question to raise potentially at another meeting. But so we don't have anyone here from DOT that could actually speak to that question.
No, understood. And that was a concern that was raised a number of times. I think, though, with the information that we have about what the existing travel patterns are, and unfortunately things have changed dramatically in the last year or so, but the data we had prior to the pandemic of what we had for turning movements and stacking along there, you'll notice if you look into it in detail, I think today the lane configuration has changed. What's proposed is different than what's there at Free Street. So that will have an impact, but the timing of the signal is indicated. You may end up having some on certain times of the day, some queue back to Forest Street. And it's, yeah, the lane assignments, right, are slightly different, but hey, it's nice to see you. I knew you were here. You hid, nobody introduced you when you walked in. Yeah, that's awesome. Caitlin's over here. But the timing of the signal will take that into account, and if we have problems, there's obviously some shifts can be made and some reallocation of green time to that stretch. But the problem is that you're balancing it against a heavy flow on High Street. And as the woman earlier said, if we could figure out how to divert people down to Commercial Street and back over. Exactly. Oh, and Caitlin just said there is a project on Congress Street with a lot of the traffic signals are being upgraded, so that may have an impact as well. So things are aware. Caitlin, you want to? No.
Caitlin, I just want to say we could take one or two questions.
This is a question for Caitlin and for Congress Square Park. How much more money needs to be raised for the sculpture?
we're not commenting on the capital campaign at this time, but happy to chat with anybody who is interested in more details.
Any other last questions for Sarah or Keiko? No? Okay, well, we want to thank our presenters today. We're really happy to have Keiko, Patrick, and Sarah here with us. We want to thank all of you for coming out, and we look forward to seeing you at future meetings. Thank you.